Welcome to this USA Women's National Team session on learning. It's a big one and an important one. I got to play on the men's team for quite a few years, and 4 of those years we were coached by Marv Dunphy, one of the all-time great coaches in this sport and one of my favorite coaches. And one of the things that he loved to say is, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. And that applies even if you're getting just a little bit better, because the implication behind that is other teams are out there working at least as hard as we are, other coaches, other countries. And so we have to try to maximize our learning, our improvement, and take advantage of the time that we have together in a more efficient way than anybody else, and as efficient as possible. That's the bottom line. Here is our team. From Rio, where we have just won the bronze medal. But are we good enough yet? No, that's a big question that we ask. Are we good enough? And that's okay, because we're not in a state of being, we're in a state of becoming. And how we become is by being better learners. We want to accomplish special things. Teams all the way down the line do, with college national team, youth national team, juniors, and so goes it. We have an opportunity to do things that our programs have never done before. And the best way, the best chance that we have is making learning and improving job number 1, first and foremost. And again, we're not good enough yet, starting with me. And that is completely okay, because it's all about how do we continue in this process of development. So the 3 things that I'm going to cover today are really 3 facets of learning. 1 is called growth mindset. 1 are some practice strategies that you can use. And 3 is just a little of the biology behind it. There's actual science to this learning stuff that might help you commit yourself to it even more. So we'll start with mindset. You've probably heard that term, that word, bandied about a lot. People have talked about it and really focused on that a lot. So that would be my first homework for you, is hopefully you have a piece of paper and something to write with. You'll pause in a second. But the question is, can you define that? What would that mean to you? This term that you probably hear about a lot, mindset. I think I have a tip there. Perceptions are involved. So for me, what that means, how I would define it, mindset is a perception of my skills or abilities, or anybody's perception of their abilities, and their perception of their ability to change those and to have an impact on those and to improve those. So a lot of this started with a social psychologist, a developmental psychologist by the name of Dweck, who's now a professor at Stanford. And she and her colleagues were doing some early studies. And one of the big studies that led to her founding this field is where they studied, they took a bunch of 5th graders, and they divided them into 2 equal groups, equal in terms of their current math performance and other things like that. And they gave them a test that was reasonably challenging. Both groups performed the same on those 2 tests, but they gave feedback to these 2 groups in different ways. One of the groups was given feedback saying, hey, nice work on this test. You must be really smart. Keyword being smart. The other group they gave feedback to was, nice job on this test. You must have worked really hard. And it turns out there is a huge difference between a term like smart and a term like effort. A term like smart, we have in our minds often a thought of, well, I'm born with a set level of intelligence or IQ. It's something that lots of people think we don't have much impact on. Versus giving people feedback on their effort. That is something that we all believe we greatly control. And so then they went on to offer each group a more difficult test. They offered the group that they said, oh, you must be really smart. Would you like to take a more challenging test? They also offered the other group. Which group do you think, here's your next homework question, which group do you think jumped at the chance, and why, at taking this second and more challenging test? Well, if you said it was the effort group, you're right. 90% of the kids who were given feedback on their effort jumped at the chance, were excited at the chance of diving into a more challenging test. Less than half of the kids who were complimented or given feedback on their smart, with the word smart, jumped at the chance or accepted the chance to take a more difficult test. So here would be another question to ponder. Why do you think that is? People of the same ability, they were chosen and picked into two equal groups because they currently performed about the same in their mathematical abilities. And now you have your answers, and mine would be that in some ways the smart group maybe doesn't know if they're that smart. They don't want to be found out. And if they take a tougher test, they're going to miss. They know they're going to miss more of those. And this label of smart can actually have an impact on whether they dive in and continue in this process of developing. So it can actually be a limiting factor. So they went on through and took more tests, and then eventually got back to a test that was very similar to the initial test that they took after this series of events. And the group that was complimented or given feedback on their effort ended up performing at a higher level by 30% than that same group had initially on the same test in terms of challenge. Meanwhile, the group that was given feedback with the word smart in it, or intelligence, actually fell in their performance. So now all of a sudden we have a 40% difference in performance on the exact same test, all based on their perceptions of their abilities. That's where the mindset comes in. And so there was one example kid who Carol Dweck wrote about in her book, Mindset, who just, when offered the chance at a tougher problem, licked his lips and shoved his chair into his closer to his desk and said, "I love a challenge." And that's the attitude that sprouts more from what is called a growth mindset, a mindset that has a firm belief that we can get better at anything. Doesn't mean we're going to get to be the best in the world at anything, but we can get to be better at anything. We can get to be smarter at anything. Not everybody believes that, and it actually has an impact on our own ability to learn. So it's really smart if we can. Actually, take the word smart out of it. It's really effortful if we can, and effective if we can. Take on more of these growth mindset attributes. Nobody's fully growth mindset or fully fixed, but what we can do is, adjust our mindset. So here would be some of the things that might be more representative of these two different types of mindsets. On the left, you would see that somebody who's more of a fixed mindset might say, I'm fixed in my skills and abilities. I have what I have. What might be a phrase, or somebody might say, I'm not a math person. I'll never be a dancer. I'll never do this. I wasn't born with that. Well, if you take on a more growth mindset approach to this, then you can say, look, I am not just born with a certain amount of ability in this area. I'm not just born with a certain amount of ability in volleyball, in any of the skills in volleyball, in being a great teammate. I can have an impact on all of those. One of the main concerns is how people, for those who are more growth mindset fixed, who are more fixed mindset, is they're going to be concerned about how others see them, maybe concerned about how we're judged. And volleyball's a difficult thing. We put it on the line put a uniform on, and lots of people are watching. Lots of people are watching live. Lots of people are watching maybe a stream on the internet or on television. And we can fall susceptible to feeling like we're getting judged. This too can impact our ability to get better because we're going to take less risks. We're going to try to avoid mistakes instead of throwing ourselves into it and knowing that it's not about how others perceive us. It's about getting better. So some of the other things are, if I'm more of a fixed mindset, I'm going to hold myself back from accepting really serious challenges. Meanwhile, like that kid who pulled his chair up to the desk closer, he's excited about the next challenge. And that's what we're trying to foster all the way through our USA system, is this idea of every day there are challenges and opportunities to respond to those challenges. Great people on my side of the net, great people across the net who are going to challenge me, and that's how we're going to make each other better. Another big area is in feedback. People who are more of a fixed mindset, when they get feedback, especially from a coach, they're going to take it personally. They're going to get defensive. They're going to think, well, wait a minute, I thought I was really good already. Why are you telling me how I can get better? Instead of somebody who is more of a growth mindset, takes more of a growth mindset approach to it, who's saying, great, feedback is information. Information, even if I fail, failure is information too. And that's, I can just think of failure, of falling short, of making mistakes as information that I can use to get better. Finally, fixed mindset people are, like I said, are going to tend to avoid mistakes. Growth mindset people understand that we actually have to be working at the edge of our abilities. And if we're not making mistakes, we're not working close enough to that edge, and we're actually hurting, slowing down our own learning process. So as all of us in USA are trying to make our learning process most efficient, accelerate it the most, we should be making mistakes. I should be making mistakes. Our coaching staff, our staff, and of course, all of our players should be making mistakes. We should be celebrating those sometimes. It means I'm trying something new. I'm trying something different. And it might not work the first time. It might not work the 80th time, but the 81st time it might. And that's where I'm now gaining an advantage and accelerating my learning process. So that's a little summary of growth mindset. Now we go on to some practice strategies, some things that you can do when you're in the training environment to try to accelerate your learning process, both, of course, as coaches and, of course, as players. Now, at the USA senior national team level, we have a period of time where we're together and we try to structure a learning environment in our training gym in Anaheim at American Sports Center that's suited to growth mindset, to making mistakes, to knowing that it's going to be ugly and chaotic at times when we're playing volleyball. It's a difficult sport to play. Of course, we're going to make mistakes, and we need to be getting better. So we have this time each year, maybe 5 or 6 months, from sometime in April or May till sometime in September and October. And we get to foster that as a group, and that's a really good environment to make that happen. But we also have this time where we're apart, especially for senior national team people, but certainly even more below. Senior national team people, like Feluca that you see here, will spend time with club teams from all around the world. Or some people might not go play club. They might stay in the USA and be training in small group environments in our own gym. But either way, what our players tend to find when they go overseas is they get little or no feedback, little or no information from a lot of their college coaches. I was just texting back and forth yesterday with a player who said, "We have not gotten feedback all season long." This is 6 months into an overseas season. and the coach has not said one thing. I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong. That coach has to make those decisions. But we need feedback and we need information at some point to get better. So we need to come up with some strategies, both when we're together as a program and when we're apart, each in our separate areas. So one of the things is that's really helpful is to go into a training session or a group of training sessions. Certainly coaches do this, and that is to make a plan. What are we trying to get better at today? What is this team making as its big priorities for improvement this week, this month, this day, things like that. Now, your plan doesn't have to look like this one on the whiteboard here. It looks like a lot of fun making, but that's going to take a long time. So this is your next homework question. And let me give you an example, and this might be something that a lot of our players do overseas. Maybe I'm a middle blocker, and I'm going to tell myself I have had a little trouble getting my left shoulder over the ball, like getting my shoulders parallel with the net, and I feel like a hitter's been having hitters in the opposing zone for opposing left side hitters have been having more success than they should against me. So my focus for today or for this week is I'm going to get my shoulders parallel with the net, and I'm going to make sure I'm really strong with that left hand and that left shoulder. So that would be an example. So here's your next homework assignment. What would yours be? Make 2 of those yourself. Pretend you're about to go into a training session. You know what you've been doing better lately, and you know where your best opportunities for growth are. So come up with a couple of plans, and those will be good to talk with teammates and with coaches about. This applies both when we're working together in our own USA gym, but also, and maybe even more importantly, when we're all working separately, it's a huge thing to buddy up. Find somebody on your team, a teammate. Our players at the senior national team level, obviously it helps to find somebody who speaks English, and that's not always possible in any given situation, but somebody who's interested in learning and with whom you have a reasonable rapport and an ability to communicate. Because it's a huge help if you two can hold each other accountable, and not like, you stink, you just screwed up on that one, but like, hey, I'm finding a buddy, and you can commit to your friend, to your buddy, and just say, hey, look, here's what I'm working on today. What are you working on? Oh, okay, you're going to work on that as a setter. I'm working on this as a middle blocker. Great. We're going to keep an eye out for each other in this training session. And I'll give you a little feedback. Every once in a while, I might catch you if you're not doing what you want to do, and not telling you, oh, you screwed up that time, but just saying something like, hey, I know you're working on that left shoulder, trying to get it over the net, or get your shoulders parallel. Look like that time it drifted off. Or, of course, looking out for positive examples, catching your buddy doing something right, exactly what she was trying to do. It's a really effective way of staying on task, especially for people who are playing overseas and going for months without hearing anything from any of the coaching staff. So that's a great way to stay on task. So think of yourself in your past. Have you ever had examples or used examples like that, where you've buddied up with a partner and let her know what you're working on, asked her what she's working on, and given each other some feedback on it? This is effective even when you have a USA coaching staff around you, because there are always more players than coaches. And coaches obviously can help you guide this process, but if coaches have given you some indications as to what to work on, then you can buddy up and keep even more on it, because coaches' eyes can't be everywhere and on every player all the time. Really good opportunities. So take a second and think about some examples from the past, or maybe one from the past, and then think about one where you might set that up in a future training session. Thirdly, there's what happens afterwards. So first, we talked about planning. That's what's before the training session. Then we talked about some feedback issues and feedback mechanisms or strategies during the training session. Finally, there might be what comes afterward, and we could call this reflection. We could call it a debrief. We do plenty of that in the senior women's national team gym. Things like simple questions like, what did we do well? Or what did we do best? Or what are two things we did really well today? And what are two or three or one or two things that we could do a lot better? Where's our opportunity for improvement? Obviously, in this process, we don't have to do the coffee, but taking a little time to reflect on how that session went, what went well, what we could do better at is, of course, really effective for both coaches who can get better for the next training session in their planning, and for athletes in how did my buddy system work? What didn't work? What words can I use? You could sit down with your buddy and reflect on how your strategy worked. And over time, you can use that reflection to get better. We don't just learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on that experience. And it's like an amplifier or an accelerator. Because if we just go from training session to training session with no reflection on what went well and what can go better, we're losing out on an opportunity to make this a much more effective process. And we can drive this. That's one of the beauties of all of these strategies, is these are things that each of us as individuals have under our control completely. And so if we can improve our mindset and our strategies during, then we can have a big impact on the actual biology that's going on inside our heads, inside our brains. So let's cover that for a second. We have everything that you do, learning how to read, passing a volleyball, driving a car, all of those skills. You had none of those skills when you were born. You had to develop all of those skills, and all of them are really just connections and circuits in your brain. So those connections and circuits run through neurons, and we've got a whole lot of them in our brain, so that would be the next homework question. How many neurons do you think are in the average human brain? So as we're learning, we have this stuff. In fact, I'll go back for a second. You see on those neurons, there are these yellow things there, and those are packets of myelin wrapping. They call it like a sheath. And so as we learn, we actually add to that sheath of myelin in all of these neurons. It turns out there are about 100 billion of them in the human brain. And as we learn and get better, you can see on the left there in these spinning neurons, there is virtually no myelin to be visible. And that is actually how each of us was born. We had no myelin in our brains, essentially no myelin wrapping on our neurons. And that's why babies are absolute learning machines, because any that they add adds to none and speeds up the process. You can see there's a visual representation here of the fact that on the left, there's a far slower signal traveling down the neuron. On the right, with all of that myelin wrapping or sheathing, you can see that the signal travels more. It's like insulation. And so the signal can travel a lot faster, and the signal stays a lot stronger. So as you have learned and become a better volleyball player, you've built these circuits, these connections, and you've added a lot of myelin to your system. And that allows you to see the game faster, to make better decisions, to read. That's a really important skill, maybe the most important in volleyball. And when you don't have a lot of myelin, when you were starting out in this game, the signals traveled a lot more slowly. And it was just really a struggle. You had to think about everything that you were doing. Just as a baby has to think about walking and learning how to walk. We don't have to think about walking at all. We've got all the myelin we need in that walking pathway. We never have to think about it, and it's instant, and the signals travel very clearly. If we were to have a head injury or an accident, that could get jumbled up and we could actually lose the ability to walk and have to rebuild that and rebuild new pathways and add more myelin to our system. So we put all these strategies to get better. Again, embracing more of a growth mindset, having strategies in place during training, before, during, and after, and understanding what it's actually doing every day to our biology in our heads. And we can help ourselves become better at anything. It doesn't mean that if you're 4'8", you're going to dominate in the NBA. It doesn't mean you're going to get to be the best in the world at something, but it means you can get significantly better at any skill, even skills that up until now you've not been very good at all. You can learn to be a better competitor. You can learn to be a better teammate. You can learn to be a better player, a better daughter, a better person. And you can learn, I don't have it on here, but you can learn to respond to challenges and adversity better. One example of that, quick story, was from a little less than 4 years ago, before the 2014 World Championships. One of our liberos, Kayla Banworth, our starting libero at that tournament. We have a lot of good players in our gym, and we mix and match a lot. We play with different teams almost every activity so that we're fostering this learning process of being a better teammate, being a better communicator with different people in each round. And so day after day, she kept losing. Whatever team she was on was losing the round. Finally, on the last day before we left or departed our country for the tournament in Italy, we had 6 more rounds of competition. She played round 1, she lost. 2, 3, 4, and 5. She lost again. She finally got a rest in the 6th and final round. And the team that she would have been on won, and that's when she just hit the wall and snapped and lost it. Had not been able to win for 2 straight weeks. But the great response was, because we face this challenge and we embrace as much growth mindset as possible, is she went on to have a great tournament at World Championships, one of many, and helped us win our first ever major championship of any sort. And so those things all fall from being a better learner. I think what I would finish with is, I guess, what I'd call a humility mantra from the book called Resilience. A lot of great quotes in there, and one of them is this mantra: I begin with humility, I act with humility, I end with humility. It leads to charity, it leads to an open mind and a forgiving heart. With an open mind and a forgiving heart, I see every person as superior to me in some way, every person as a teacher to me. I grow in wisdom then, and as I grow in wisdom, humility becomes ever more my guide. I begin with humility, I act with humility, I end with humility. And so I have something to learn from every single person that I encounter throughout each day of my life.